Well, we're here to give you updates on what's obviously a very tragic situation, and we continue to pray for all of the families involved. This has been a very painful episode for the people of East Harlem. There's still a lot of unknowns here, and that only adds to the difficulty for people. So we'll talk about the information we have. We'll make clear throughout this briefing there are still things we don't know. There's still people missing. There's still information we need, but we'll give you everything we can right now. I want to say at the outset, the response by the fire department and all of the other agencies involved has been extraordinary. I hope the people of East Harlem and the families and all of the people affected take some solace in the fact that every effort has been expended to address this crisis and to search for their loved ones. I want to thank those who are with me today: Fire Commissioner Sal Casano, OEM Commissioner Joe Bruno, Police Commissioner Bill Bratton, our Acting Buildings Commissioner Tom Ferriello, the Health Department Assistant Commissioner Tom Mate, from the Department of Environmental Protection Deputy Commissioner James Roberts, from Con Edison CEO John McAvoy, and then two of my colleagues in public office, of course, the Speaker of the City Council, Melissa Mark Viverito, who represents the area that was affected, who lives just blocks away, whose district office is literally around the corner, and has taken an exemplary role and lead in providing help to people who have been affected. Her office has become a staging area and a place where people have been going for help, and I know her constituents deeply appreciate all she has done. I also want to thank Assemblyman Robert Rodriguez, who represents the area as well, and has been both a good friend and has been actively trying to help all of the affected people. Let's give you the latest on what is obviously a fatal explosion, serious loss of life, and building collapse in East Harlem. It's been, as I said, painful 26 hours now. Everyone involved in the rescue effort has given their all. I was up today meeting with some of the first responders. They've been fighting through the cold, they've been fighting through the wind, exceedingly difficult circumstances, and they have stuck with it. As you know, the wreckage is still smoldering. Various points, the fire got whipped up a little bit again by the wind. And despite all that, our first responders from the FDNY, from EMS, from NYPD, all of the agencies involved, continue to do what they do so consistently. No matter what is thrown at them, they keep fighting. And they've done an exemplary job. This city is no stranger to adversity, and our first responders exemplify what's best about New York City, that we somehow persevere despite everything thrown at us. And their training, their professionalism came out so clearly in this last 26 hours, and we're all entirely grateful for that. Now, rescue operations have continued. As we know, there's been a confirmed additional loss of life, but we are continuing rescue operations, hoping to find others still alive. And let me caution to everyone here, everyone watching at home, that these rescue operations will continue for an open-ended period of time. There will be disruption in the immediate area because we have to continue this rescue operation. We're very devoted to it. At the same time, an investigation is underway to understand exactly what happened here. These operations will continue for days as we continue to both do the rescue and learn all we can learn. And we will give updates as we learn more. But here's what we know right now. Tragically, there are 7 people now confirmed dead. The identities of 2 of the victims have been released. They are Griselda Camacho and Carmen Tanco. The identities of the others have not yet been released, pending family notification. Approximately 40 people have been treated and transported by EMS to nearby hospitals, including Harlem Hospital, Metropolitan, Mount Sinai, and St. Luke's. Among our first responders, thank God there have been no injuries. In terms of those still not located, either missing or not yet located, not yet identified, anyone who's trying to find a family member or loved one who might have been in the immediate area of the explosion yesterday can call 311 and ask for the Unified Victim Identification System. Call 311 and ask for the Unified Victim Identification System. We've had about 200 calls so far. Anyone outside New York City searching for a loved one can call 212-639-9675. Again, 212-639-9675. These family members, loved ones, neighbors are still waiting anxiously. Let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. In terms of the rescue and recovery operations and the ongoing investigation. Investigation of this incident is being conducted jointly by the Fire Department's Bureau of Fire Investigations, meaning the fire marshals, and the Police Department's Arson and Explosives Unit. And they're now working in collaboration with the National Transportation Safety Board. Because there are still hot spots in the wreckage smoldering, there still is some fire present. The fire operations also continue. The firefighting operations also continue. And the search and rescue operation, obviously, which began after the incident, has continued. A lot of people have been displaced, a lot of surrounding buildings affected. We vacated 89 residential units and 3 businesses and 7 surrounding buildings due to the ongoing fire operations and because gas and heat are not operating for those buildings. Now, none of these vacate orders, and this is important, none of these vacate orders were issued due to any structural problem in the other buildings. They've been inspected and determined to be sound. At this moment, 66 people, including 14 families with children, are receiving temporary shelter at the Salvation Army Community Corps Center, located at 175 East 125th Street. Office of Emergency Management is opening a resident service center at noon today at that same location, 175 East 125th Street. And so the resident service center and the overnight shelter will be co-located. There'll be a variety of city agencies there and community-based agencies there to help people. We hope to create one stop where people affected by the explosion can go for help. I want to emphasize, I know this is something Speaker Mark Viverito cares deeply about as well. Anyone affected by this tragedy will be helped, anyone, regardless of immigration status. And it's very important to get that message out. I ask all of you to help spread that word clearly to people, regardless of immigration status. Anyone affected can come forward for help. They should not be afraid. We intend to help everyone. In terms of the Buildings Department, yesterday, as I said, Buildings Department completed a structural assessment of surrounding buildings, determined them to be structurally stable and not in danger of collapse. The vacate orders, again, issued to support the firefighting and rescue efforts and because of the absence of other services. Buildings Department also in the process of inspecting the cellars of buildings in the surrounding block for any signs of flooding due to the water main break that occurred. In terms of Con Edison, upwards of 70 Con Edison personnel have been on the site working with fire officials and emergency service personnel. All electric and gas service has been shut down between East 116th Street and East 117th Street on the west side of Park Avenue, as well as on the north side of 116th near Park Avenue. Con Ed crews continue to work with the FDNY to make sure the area is safe and to determine the exact cause of yesterday's explosion. There have been a lot of concerns about air quality. I was up there again this morning right at the immediate site. The high winds added to this. It kicked up a lot of dust and a lot of smoke. We've sent workers from the city's Department of Environmental Protection to the site and the surrounding blocks to monitor the air quality levels. At this moment, the Department of Health has issued guidance, recommends that residents in the immediate vicinity of the fire and the building collapse, in the immediate surrounding blocks. 3 things: limit exposure by staying indoors and, if possible, keeping their windows closed. If anyone in the immediate area experiences shortness of breath, chest pains, or a worsening medical condition such as asthma, they should seek immediate medical attention. The conditions we see out there as this moment are not such as to cause significant health problems for healthy people, but they can have an undue effect on vulnerable populations like seniors and children. So that's for people in the immediate blocks. Very important to limit exposure to the air right around the site. A message now in Spanish. Quiero decirles a las personas que están siguiendo este terrible evento por televisión. Las operaciones de rescate y la investigación para determinar las causas continúan. Estas operaciones continuarán por días y iremos actualizando la información a medida que sepamos más. Para reportar a personas desaparecidas, por favor, llamar al 311. And if there are other questions as we go along in Spanish, I believe Speaker Mark Viverito will help me. With that, I think we have covered the basic points. Obviously, this press conference is for on-topic questions only. Let's take questions on this incident. Michael.
Mayor, there have been multiple folks in the area who said that they have smelled gas for days preceding the incident. Can you tell us whether or not the city has received any reports of folks smelling gas, either through 311 or 911, in the days preceding this happening, and sort of what efforts are being done to see if any of those reports came in to anybody in the city?
When we heard that, we took those reports very seriously, and we reviewed the data. Let me ask Sal or Joe, who has the exact.
We went back 30 days, and there was not a report of a gas leak in any of the 2 buildings, 1644 and 1646, or any of the other surrounding buildings in that area of a reported gas leak, going back 30 days.
Is that 311 and 911?
Yeah, it was both. We did not get any calls.
Did Con Ed get any calls?
Con Ed, John?
We've gone back and looked at any gas calls on that block going back 3 years, and we found 2 calls prior to yesterday. One was May 17, 2013. One was January 26, 2011. Both were on customer equipment internal to the building, and both were repaired at those dates. Other than those 2, going back 3 years for the entire block, no reports of any gas leaks from the area.
Have you had issues with people coming forward because of their immigration status? That's something that's been happening.
Well, it's always a concern. Let me let Speaker Mark Viverito speak to this challenge. It's always a concern, especially with people in such immediate need. We don't want anything to inhibit them. And why don't you do it in both languages? No, let me get you these steps here. I'm sorry. You are worthy of this additional support.
My district, as it is in terms of New York City, is incredibly diverse, and we do have a growing immigrant population, more recently arrived. So that is always an issue, and I am very concerned about that issue generally. So I always want to make sure that it is clear to my constituents and it is clear to anyone that may be impacted that they should never hesitate to ask for help, because we do have an executive order in this city which prevents any first responder, any city agency from asking anyone's immigration status, so they should never be afraid to avail themselves to services. And I think that message, it needs to be communicated time and again, and it would be relevant to my district. And when it comes to outreach to people in the immediate surrounding area, we also have to be sensitive to linguistic needs, and that's something that I always have shared with the mayor, and I share with every city agency. que sí en este distrito vamos a tener preocupaciones sobre la habilidad de las personas que necesiten el apoyo y la ayuda que las reciban. Y así que en nuestra comunicación a través de estos medios y otros medios es importante que la gente en esta comunidad y la gente impactada sepa que no importa su estatus migratorio, que deberían buscar y acudir por asistencia, que pueden acudir a mi oficina, pueden llamar el 311, pero tenemos una orden ejecutiva en esta ciudad que protege a las personas, no importa su estatus migratorio, pueden buscar servicios de la ciudad y nunca se le va a preguntar ese estatus. Así que la gente impactada debería estar pidiendo esa ayuda y si no se sienten cómodos en llamar el 311, que pueden acudir a mi oficina.
Let me ask Commissioner Bruno to further respond on this point.
As the mayor mentioned, we've opened up a resident service center at the Salvation Army location on 125th Street. At that location, we will not inquire as to your status at all, and we encourage people to come in. We have the Department for the Aging will be there, Department of Homeless Services, Department of Buildings for people who want to know more about vacates and what is happening there, as will HPD will be there as well to talk about building vacates. Department of Health to talk about any health issues people have. The Red Cross will be there. We will be there as well organizing that. The Human Resources Administration, HRA, will be there to help with that. If there are insurance issues, the New York State Department of Insurance will be there with us as well. The Mayor's Office for Immigrant Affairs will be there. We'll have multi-languages available or available to us through resources the city always provides. The Police Department will be there as well. The Bar Association will be there and have lawyers there if people want to talk about legal issues, and they'll give some advice. Small Business Association, the Salvation Army will do feeding along with the Red Cross. So we have all of those services. People should not hesitate to come in. It's there so that people can come to one location, get whatever they need. And if we don't have the service there, for example, if people want to know about what happens with their children, if they are moving with family and friends, whether they want to transfer a student or get a bus to pick the student up, we will get that information. We have direct contact with DOE, and we'll provide information on that. So we want, I think as the mayor said, and certainly council members said, this is all about getting people as much as we can, as quickly as we can, in one location. Thank you.
Marcia.
I wonder if you, at this point, can tell us what you're looking at as potential causes of the explosion. Something in the apartment, outside the apartment, and what role the water main break might have caused. Some people have suggested that if water was going, under the pipes for a while, it might have eaten away at the dirt below the pipes, causing the pipes to break of their own accord because there was nothing to support them. So I'm wondering, in terms of looking at what could have caused this devastation, if you are going to tell us the whole world of what you're looking at.
I'm going to just be very broad in my response, and if Commissioner Bratton or Commissioner Cassano want to add, obviously they should. First of all, everything we're telling you here today is preliminary. It's what we know at this point. But as I said at the beginning, we expect to have a lot more information in the next few days. And then there's going to be an ongoing investigation. So information will come as is available, as is confirmed. I don't think we prejudge. We know there was an explosion. But we don't know everything about the lead up to it. And that's why we're doing a thorough investigation. And by the way, we can only get conclusive evidence when the fire is out, when the rescue is completed, and we really get a chance to look at all the facts. So I think it would be premature to speculate. I can tell you that every energy is going to be expended to get down to the truth here and learn from it. Commissioner? That's all I'm going to say on it, but let's see if either commissioner wants to add.
Well, what we need to do is get to the basement. We have to clean the area out, get all the debris out, and then they get to the heating units, get to the meters, places that could possibly be a source of ignition or a source of the leak, and then work our way back towards the street. But we need to clean out the basement and get all the debris out first.
Do you think that the water main break happened before the explosion, or that the explosion caused the water main break?
It's too early to decide that, but we will look at that also. We're going to try to work with Con Ed, and we'll get back out into the street. But mainly, we got to get rid of the debris first. We got to make sure that there is nobody else in the area. So we got to do that first.
Mr. Mayor, two-part question. First is, could you tell us precisely how many people are still missing? And then as a follow-up to the water main break question, both the water main and the gas pipes, these are very old, 100-year, very old pipes. What are your fears about the city's aging infrastructure that we might see more of these incidents going forward?
Let me, on the first point, as with all these answers, I will start, and then if any of my colleagues want to add, they will. We are being very careful not to put out specific numbers until we're 100% sure. There's still questions about the whereabouts of some individuals, so I don't want to put forward a number until we're certain. As soon as we have additional information, we will certainly update you. As to our aging infrastructure, we know this is a fundamental challenge for New York City and any older city. This is not the occasion to talk about the dynamics of our national government and the lack of support for infrastructure improvements. That's a separate discussion for another day. We here in this city have to constantly be vigilant for anything we can do with our resources to strengthen our existing infrastructure, and we have to be vigilant for any kind of problem that might exist at any particular location. So we, I think, pride ourselves in the City of New York for responding very quickly to any particular report we get that's related to a potential infrastructure problem. And in that, I think we are in a strong position because our agencies are so professional about responding quickly. But you're absolutely right. You know, this is an older city, and this is a challenge we face on an ongoing basis, and we're working all the time to try and perfect the strategies that we can achieve within our existing resources.
Also, that include preemptive measures to, like, knowing an area that has particularly old or vulnerable infrastructure?
I think we are always looking for ways. Areas with old and vulnerable infrastructure describes a lot of New York City, honestly. But we're always looking for ways to improve our ability to communicate with people, to respond rapidly to any reports we get. Look, the one thing I can say we know is people, every member, every person in this city, every citizen of this city should certainly always tell the city government if they see a problem. If you say something, if you see something, say something. We associate the phrase, if you see something, say something, with reporting to the police, and that is true and that is necessary, but I think it's equally true with other types of challenges. So we want to really strongly urge that anyone who smells gas, report it immediately to 311 or to Con Ed. And by the way, that is 24/7. I want to strongly encourage, if there's something that we need to remind ourselves at this moment, is that if you smell gas any hour, any day, even for 5 minutes, report it to Con Ed or report it to 311 so that appropriate action can be taken. That kind of greater communication is important. But I think on the broader front, we are constantly looking for anything that we need to address. I know Buildings Department all the time looking at the structural integrity of buildings. Fire Department all the time is looking at whether buildings have been made fire safe or not. This is a constant effort in this city, and that is something we focus on intensely. We devote a lot of personnel and a lot of resources to, and we'll continue, and I think over time, improve those efforts as we learn better ways to do it and learn from other parts of the country. The broader infrastructure challenge is something we address every single day with the resources we have. But that is a tough battle, given that we are not getting some of the support that we deserve.
Mr. Mayor, my question is actually for Mr. McAvoy. If you could come over. It seems like from what you folks are all saying, this happened pretty much out of nowhere. I mean, the fire commissioner is talking about they went back over 30 days, not one report. You guys go back over 3 years, and you get the 2 minor reports of things that were fixed. So my question is this. What do you say to people who live in this city to alleviate any of their fears that, hey, this happened in this neighborhood like that? What's to say it's not going to happen in my neighborhood today?
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to that history, just to put the performance of this area in perspective, because there have been a lot of reports of leaks being evident for months or work being done. In addition to a 3-year look at leak history and only 2 small leaks on customer piping being found all more than 9 months ago, we also went back 10 years and looked at the history of the gas main on that street, Park, between 116th and 117th. And only 2 cases where any work was done there. 2011, there was a water service replacement, and in conjunction with that, we took the opportunity to replace about 70 feet of piping. And going back to 2004, there was a leak on a coupling on the gas main, and we made a repair at that time. So again, more evidence that there wasn't a historical condition. We also do gas surveys throughout our system. And I'll describe several to you. First, all the gas mains, the larger lines that run through the street, we survey them every year for gas leaks. And it's with a mobile device that's extremely sensitive to any leak. We last surveyed this pipe in July of 2013, and no leaks identified at that time. We also are attentive to the effects of deeply cold weather. When it gets very cold, the ground can heave, and the freezing and thawing cycle can put additional stress. So in areas that have cast iron piping, we specifically survey under these extreme weather conditions. We did that both on this block in February 10th and February 28th of this year. So just a couple of weeks ago, the last one. And again, no leaks were identified at that time. So the mayor's point about reporting gas leaks early and immediately is really one of the real key takeaways here. Cases where gas starts to leak allow us the opportunity almost all the time to respond quickly. We know that there was at least one resident who smelt gas the night before but did not report it. That might have given us an opportunity here, and we think in all likelihood would have given us an opportunity here had those reports in. So the mayor's guidance to call Con Ed anytime 24/7. When you call us, that is our highest priority. You hear it as soon as you go into the queue, that those calls get handled immediately, or call 311. Those are the paths available, and we'll keep working to reinforce that message with all of our customers and residents in the city.
So are you saying then that that's really the best that you can tell the people of the city is that if you smell something, to go ahead and report it, because that could have alleviated this or probably or possibly?
No, I think it's by definition a more complicated reality than just that. But let's start with this. First of all, to clarify, when you call either Con Ed or 311, these are emergency response dynamics, meaning your call is acted on. Con Ed sends out a crew. If it's something that's judged by the nature of the call to be more urgent and immediate, the fire department responds directly. So this is something I think, honestly, a lot of New Yorkers do not know. A gas leak call is not treated as business as usual. It demands an urgent response from whatever combination of Con Ed and the fire department. Again, 311 or calling Con Ed directly. What is the number?
875 Con Ed.
800-75 Con Ed. 800-75 CONED. Very important to get that information out. The bigger point really connects to everything we do. What people should have confidence in is they're served by the finest fire department, the finest police department on earth, and that we are constantly working to make sure we're addressing anything we hear about. The Buildings Department does an extraordinary job. Look at the sheer extent of this city and the age of the city. The Buildings Department has to constantly assess each building and make sure things are up to code and look for dangers that require immediate response. So one thing that we have in New York City that is not true in much of the rest of the country is such an extraordinarily large, concentrated, focused public apparatus to protect every form of public safety. And that is happening every day, 24/7. So people can rest assured that these professionals are on the case all the time. We need the public every time to work with us. We need the public to work with the police on matters of public safety, to work with the fire department, to call in what they see. That's going to help us do our job better. And so I think when you add up all those factors, we can say there's a lot out there to protect people. And then, God forbid, an incident happens, that they can be assured the response is going to be vigorous and intense, and that we're going to expend every effort to save anyone involved and protect anyone involved. Okay, let me, I'm sorry, we got to get around to other people. Kate.
Is there any thought thought about going back further than 30 days of 311 or 911 calls, and why 30 days in particular? Some people have said that they recall gas going back further than that, and the police from the 25th precinct coming in and back.
Okay, let me separate the pieces because I think it's important for a fact. First of all, there's a full review, full investigation that's going to go on. That's going to look at all that formally. I want to differentiate what we say to you preliminarily today versus what a full formal investigation is going to bring forward to you. We do know, I think now, just looking to first to Commissioner Cassano, then Commissioner Bratton, the review on the calls went back how far?
30 days, we're going back further as we speak.
Right. And then Commissioner Bratton, on the question of the 2-5 precinct, could you clarify the situation there?
Well, actually, we preliminarily reviewed our calls, 311 and 911, back to 2010, and have no record of any calls relative to gas leaks in that area. And as to the issue of the 2-5 precinct being involved in some type of evacuation, precinct has no, precinct commander up there has no recollection or record of any such incident, particularly involving a gas leak. So that's the preliminary review that we've made over the last 24 hours.
Right. This preliminary is the key word, and there's a number of pieces of information that we'll continue to bring out as we get them.
Mayor de Blasio, you touched on this a little bit, the air quality up there, so it's fine if you're healthy. You said DEP's up there.
I want to differentiate the blocks immediately surrounding the site. The site is still smoldering. I was there again a few hours ago. There is a fire still there. It's smoldering. The wind has whipped up the smoke and the dust. I would say, just as a layman speaking here, and if our friends from the Department of Health can come in and be more than laymen, I'm going to give you the layman's version. You'll give the exact version. If you're right up on the site or a block away in any direction, the air quality is something you should avoid it if you can. And if you're right in one of the immediate surrounding blocks, keep your windows shut, et cetera. The point is, I think there's a big difference between what a healthy person would experience versus someone, for example, who has asthma that would be that much more vulnerable. But if you go several blocks away, thank God, the situation is a lot better, and we are monitoring carefully with DEP. But let's let the Department of Health speak to this.
So we're giving the same guidance with this incident that we give always with structural fires. So any burning material produces particle pollution. Particle pollution is one of our important pollutants in New York City, and when there's a fire, there's more of it, especially in the immediate area. So our advice to people is to avoid visible smoke, heavy smoke, by being upwind, by being indoors, keeping their windows closed. And as the mayor said, particle pollution is a fact of life in New York City. It affects vulnerable people more, people with pre-existing heart and lung disease, and they're the ones who should take the most precautions and check with their providers if they're having any concerning symptoms.
Just one other note on that from Deputy Commissioner, just hold on a second, please. From Deputy Commissioner Roberts at DEP, the monitoring has been ongoing. One of the things, of course, DEP looks for immediately when there's a building fire is there asbestos exposure. So far, we're happy to say there is no indication of asbestos in the air. Rafael.
We've been talking about what happened now. What about the future of those people who have been displaced, they lost their apartment or anything? What is the city doing for them to relocate them?
Right. Let me turn to Joe. We've started again with the emergency effort to provide immediate support for them. I want to clarify, I think, and again, any of my colleagues can fill in the blanks for me. We fully believe in some of the surrounding buildings that right now needed to be evacuated, that they can be restored in short order. But let's talk to how we're going to proceed for folks who do not have a home as a result of this.
Well, as I said earlier, currently we have a shelter. We're sheltering about 66 people right now. And so those people will be cared for there. HPD, Housing Preservation Development, along with the Red Cross, are looking for more temporary housing for them. We've been talking with the council as well about perhaps other apartments in the area. For most of the buildings, they will be restored. Most of the buildings were vacated because they have no heat or electricity. They'll be restored. But for those who need it, they will once have some shelter for a while. They will then be placed into either available hotels or other items that we can use. We have some affordable housing in the area that we will attempt to place them as well. So we will do our best. This service center is all about getting those people and seeing how many needs there are and starting to place them. By the way, we do this all the time. When a building gets vacated, we often have to take people, put them in a temporary holding place, generally the school early, and then bring them to other housing, be they hotels or other types of capability to house them. So I think we'll do the same, and we'll try our best, and we certainly want to keep people in the neighborhood, and we'll take advantage of anything, particularly what the council has for us to try to utilize. Okay.
I'm wondering what time that first report last night of gas was reported, and then have there been any uptick in 311 calls about any gas smells around the city since this happened?
Let Commissioner Bratton or Commissioner Cassano may have information on any uptick. I have not heard that, but either they know now or we'll confirm back to you. On the first one, there was a report, meaning we have heard that someone smelled gas. We did not get a complaint to either 311 or Con Ed. I think that's accurate from the night before. So we don't have a tangible report. It's something that's been spread around that someone may have. But I think it begs the fundamental question about where we go from here, that there should be no hesitation in reporting. It is so much better to report the possibility even of a gas leak and let there be a response, and let's pray the response shows there's no problem, than to hesitate. And that's the central point we want to get across here. Anything on any uptick?
For the first 12 days of March, we were averaging about 49 calls coming into the department. Yesterday, we had about 90. So there was an uptick, there was an increase, and we expected it, and we expect that to last for a few more days. And I don't know about Con Ed, but certainly into the fire department, we had an uptick of about 90% of the calls.
Yes.
This is probably for Commissioner Bratton. Was the explosion caught on any surveillance cameras, and would this help show how it was that the ignition took place?
Yes, we did as we would normally do, a full review of cameras in the area, and there were a number of those cameras that did capture images at the time of the explosion, and those will be part of the ongoing investigation.
Yep.
How many people actually lived in those two buildings? We know there were 15 units, but we know the actual residents of that building?
The total number within the 15 units in the two buildings, Joe, Sally, anyone know that?
That was 15.
The units? Yeah, okay, we need to confirm that number.
Going back to what Mr. McAvoy was saying, has there been any evidence of that the harsh winter has caused any kind of structural problems across the city?
In general, do you want to speak to Con Ed first?
Yes, so we survey the system to try to detect those early, and we really have not seen any significant change in the condition of our infrastructure as a result of this harsh winter.
And Mr. McAvoy, when you had answered my question earlier, you said that somebody had reported that they had smelled gas the night before. That was not an official report. That was something that you heard after the fact, that someone said that they reported it. Is that
So
correct?
when the call that initiated our response yesterday morning at 9:13, as part of that call, the individual said that he had smelt gas the night before. Now, he didn't call the night before, but he included that in the conversation when he reported the call at 9:13, thereby indicating the leak had likely started well before the 9:13 call.
Right there.
Mr. Mayor, can you talk about emergency preparedness in the city and how it might be reshaped going forward, especially considering the aging gas lines and water mains in the city?
I think the emergency preparedness in the city is extraordinarily high and precise and capable right now. We have a lot of ongoing efforts to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure we're in a position to respond to any problem very, very quickly. I want to note yesterday, and this is such a tragedy that has occurred, but if you can find anything that's a silver lining, is that the fire department response time was 2 minutes from the report that reached the fire department. So we have this extraordinary ability to range across this whole city looking for challenges and stopping problems before they happen, and obviously to respond when, God forbid, a problem does occur. But we're always looking for ways to improve that. I think everyone standing with me is very devoted to that fact. But I think it's fair to say our infrastructure in terms of safety is extraordinarily well-developed in this city. Grace?
For Mr. McAvoy, could you talk about Con Ed's work in replacing older gas lines around the city and how much you do in a given year, why that's done, and if there are any plans to sort of speed that up so that we clear out the old quicker?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have programs for all of our infrastructure, and it looks primarily, not specifically at age, but at the performance of the equipment or like equipment on our system or other systems, as well as the risk presented by the equipment. So for a gas pipe, there's a couple of things you look at. You look at the type of construction. In this case, some of it was cast iron, which dates back 125 years. That alone is not a trigger to replace the pipe. Frankly, cast iron is incredibly durable and would not be surprised it can remain in service for several hundred years. But we don't just look at the age. We look at the types of the history of the specific pipe, what has been the leaks, the type of soil in the area, which can accelerate the deterioration of the pipe, as well as the pressure at which it operates. This is called a low-pressure gas main. It operates at extremely low pressure, about 1/4 pound. So if you blow into your hand, that's about 1/4 pound. You know, think an average car tire would be about 30 pounds. So we look at all that and we develop a risk profile, and that goes into determining the targeted areas for replacement. We currently, for the next several years, are planning to replace about 65 miles of gas main per year. That's up from 30 to 40 miles over the last several years and is frankly a fairly aggressive program. The investment overall in gas infrastructure each year is $500 million. Of that, $110 million is specifically targeting pipe where we feel needs to be replaced as a result of performance, one parameter of which includes its age.
My understanding is, so it's cast iron, but also plastic?
That's correct.
The decision was made at some point that part of it needed to be replaced? Do you know why that is?
So I don't know the history of that specific segment, but there's a few possibilities in general. One, when we're digging up the street for other work, either because there's a new business or someone wants to increase the size of their service, frankly, a big part of the cost of replacing gas main is in the digging. And so we often will say, while we're here, we've already absorbed 2/3 of the cost. Let's take advantage and replace part of it. If somebody's asking for a new service that requires a new interconnection, we'll often take advantage of that as the opportunity. Or it could be because there were some performance issues in the past that resulted in it leaking.
Okay, two questions right there, one next to each other, and then we're going to close down.
Mayor, is 15 minutes an acceptable time for Con Ed to respond to a customer complaining of a smell of gas? If someone calls in a complaint saying that they smell gas in their neighborhood, should that be treated like any other fire or any other medical emergency?
Let's break down, I think, because there's different types. I'd like Commissioner Cassano to explain. There are different calls we get with different natures, and they responded to it differently. The ones that end up, for example, getting referred to 911, and the reason why the fire department would be dispatched is different kind of call that would relate to that. So why don't we break that out, either between you or, if you want, John, do it together.
We have Con Ed has a criteria, and I'll let Mr. McAvoy explain the criteria. But when it does come into 911 for a fire department response, we're there in 5 minutes or less. But we don't get every gas leak because don't rise to the criterion that Con Ed uses, and John can explain the Con Ed.
Yes. So on a typical year, for example, 2013, we received about 31,000 calls, so roughly about 85 per day. The large majority of them turn out to be of minimal impact. So we have a screening criteria that determines which are the high priority, the high risk calls. And when the call is made, if we reach that criteria, we'll immediately call the fire department and ask for immediate response. They obviously have the means to get there much quicker, speed, red lights, and the like. Our response time for our leaks averages about approximately 22 minutes, which frankly is considered, as compared to many, a very aggressive and a very positive response time. The criteria we use looks at really what is the risk or the likelihood of a leak resulting in either impact to customers or property. And that's been developed as a result of a lot of experience in this area.
Why don't you give the examples of what those figures send into the fire department?
Great, thanks. So a few examples. First, if we receive multiple calls from the same building or nearby buildings, that would indicate a size of a leak, and so that would go immediately to 911. If someone, to the fire department, if someone were to call and cite that there's both a smell of a gas and they're having some type of electrical problem, that might be flickering lights, or they may have actually lost power, that dual commodity risk would then again result in it going directly to the fire department. Also, if there are people on site who detect gas levels above a certain threshold where we start to approach the flammable or explosive limit, that too would go directly to the fire department.
Last question right there.
I was wondering, what is the typical response time for gas leaks if someone calls 311 or 911? I understand 911 obviously would be the quickest response. 311 might be slower, and Con Ed is 22 minutes. Should people call 911 if they smell gas?
No, the idea, I think, is to call 311 or to call Con Ed directly, and depending on the criteria of the call, then will be acted on differently. I think what John explained was very important. I think the operators are trained that, for example, if they're getting repeated calls in the same area, to immediately dispatch the fire department. So there are obvious triggers that lead to that kind of level of response. I think it gets back to, look, we as the City of New York stand ready to throw everything we have at any problem. What we ask of everyone out there is tell us what you see as quickly as you see it in as much detail. If someone knows, for example, their neighbors are having a similar problem or another building down the street, tell us that immediately. If your lights are flickering, tell us that. If your electricity is off, tell us that. That will help to improve the emergency response. But I think in this case, the fire department response was extraordinarily fast. It was just obviously as the tragedy was already ensuing. Thank you, everyone.